Hello, hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our series on fusion foods with a shot at a dish that many of the Bay Area locals have been asking for, which is a crispy bacon fried rice found at the Woo Can Cook fried rice pop-up. For those not familiar, we've been doing a fun fried rice pop-up at a few locations around the Bay Area this summer, serving a number of the fried rices created in this series, and by far our most popular dish has been our crispy bacon fried rice. It is, as the name implies, a chicken and bacon fried rice, tossed with a gochujang and hoisin sauce and finished with a 2-minute sear for a nice crispy texture. If you've been following this series closely, you'll know that this was actually one of our very first recipes that came out on this channel back when we were doing just 1-minute videos. But since it has been so popular with our diners, I thought I'd dive into it with a little bit more detail today. Finally, as promised, I thought I would also use this as an opportunity to dive into one of our newest menu additions, which is our fried rice burrito, where we top our fried rice with some quick pickled shallots, a cilantro crema, and then wrap it up in a flour tortilla for the burrito that you didn't know you needed in your life, basically until you just saw this thumbnail. Okay, so let's get into it. Alright, so kicking things off with our fried rice here first, I'm starting off, as with many of our stir fries, with the aromatic elements of our wok fry. This is 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 inch or about 1 tablespoon of finely minced ginger. Then next, rounding things out for our aromatics, I'm separating the whites of 2 green onions from their leafier green portion, then slicing them up thinly and setting all 3 of these aside for our wok fry. Then I'm taking these reserved leafy greens, slicing them up thinly on a bias, and setting these aside as our finishing garnish. Next up, moving on to our veggies, there's only 1 fresh veggie in our fried rice today, and that's going to be 2 medium carrots. I'm starting off by removing the root and tip ends here, giving them both a quick peel, and then doing a medium dice. Finally, last up, I'm whisking up a couple of eggs here, then setting all of this aside while we dive into our meats next. First up here is a couple of chicken thighs. Now, you can absolutely make use of some chicken breast here too if you want. It's not really going to make a huge difference either way, although I do think that the extra fat from our thighs is going to make a nice addition. We're slicing these bad boys up into 1/2-inch pieces, then adding them to a mixing bowl while our cutting board magically cleans itself like this. I know, we all wish that happens in real life. Anyway, we're going to do a pretty quick and simple marinade on our chicken here. This is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start, followed by 1/2 teaspoon of white pepper, and then maybe most importantly, 1/2 teaspoon of cornstarch. That cornstarch is going to be pretty critical here because it's going to be how we keep our chicken from turning rubbery and overcooking in the aggressive wok heat. I'm giving this a quick toss and then setting it aside for 30 minutes to marinate while we dive into our bacon next. Now, you can get creative here and go with some applewood or maple bacon, whatever really tickles your fancy. Most importantly though, we are looking for some thick cut bacon, none of that thin cut stuff today. Our thick cut bacon is going to be a lot more fatty than that thinner cut stuff, which is going to be pretty critical for our sear later on. I'm giving this a medium dice, then watch as my cutting board magically cleans itself one more time, and we're diving into our sauce next. Okay, so for any folks that have ordered this one at our fried rice pop-up, this is the secret sauce that we serve with all of our fried rices. My partners have told me that we should keep this a secret, but I don't want to do that, so here it is. This is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start, followed by 2 tablespoons each of hoisin sauce, sesame oil, and gochujang. So there you go, the secret's out. I'm switching to a fork or a whisk here, then giving this a real thorough toss to combine until that hoisin and gochujang starts breaking down. We want to make sure that there are no solids left behind here because that's going to clump up in our wok fry if there are. Once we have all of this broken down, we're setting it aside and we're heading over to the stove. Alright, over on the stove, I'm dropping my bacon into a cold wok, then gradually bringing up the temperature of my stove over the course of about 5 minutes, starting off at medium-low and then bringing up the heat until we start seeing this nice liquid bacon fat starting to render. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. I'm pulling this out once that bacon is nice and crispy, then reheating my wok to high heat, adding 4 tablespoons of peanut oil, and as always, long yao for that nice non-stick surface. Then going in here first is our aromatic elements. This is my garlic, ginger, and the whites of my green onions. We're blooming these for about 15 seconds, then followed by my carrots. These are going to be a little bit more durable and dense, so we're giving these carrots about 2 minutes head start to soften up a little. Then I'm clearing some space in my wok and adding my chicken in next. You might notice I'm holding back the liquid from my marinade here. This is not only going to help us reduce the oil from sputtering as you drop that chicken in, but it's also going to help keep the temperature of the wok up since it won't be working to burn off all of that liquid. We're letting that chicken go for about 1 minute before tossing things to combine, then sauteing for another 2 to 3 minutes until cooked through. Next up, I'm clearing some space in my wok one more time, then adding my eggs in and letting this go for about 1 minute before combining. We want those eggs to start setting before tossing here, otherwise we're just gonna end up with egg-coated chicken rather than those nice big egg curds that we're looking for. Finally, last up, I'm adding in about 1.5 cups of leftover rice to the wok, about 1/3 at a time so that we can make sure to break down these larger clumps of rice. I'm doing this on heat, but if you're really concerned, you can also start breaking this stuff down off heat too. Last up, here's my bacon going back into the wok, followed by 1/2 cup or 2 handfuls of frozen peas. These are basically gonna defrost on residual heat, which will help keep our peas nice and crispy. Then I'm tossing this with my sauce mixture plus 2 tablespoons of sambal olek. And finally, I'm letting this sear undisturbed for 2 minutes. As always, remember the key to any sear is that you gotta stop touching it. If you move things around too much, you're gonna disturb the sear and you'll end up with mediocre browning instead. So, 2 minutes later, I'm giving this a toss to reveal some wonderfully crispy rice, then removing from heat, try not to fog up the camera lens, finishing with the greens of my green onions, and we're ready to eat. Okay, so at this point, you can absolutely sit down and start eating here. This is one of my personal favorite fried rices. I love the crispy qualities that come from the sear, and I think it just pairs super nicely with the richness of that bacon fat and the heat from our gochujang and sambal olek. It's also, as with many fried rices, a super pantry-friendly meal. Almost all of these ingredients here came out of my pantry or freezer, which makes it an excellent dish to throw together when you don't know what else to eat. The variety of proteins involved also makes it super hearty, and the crisp crunch of the peas and carrots give it a nice balanced bite. But before we dive in here though, I am going to take this one step further as promised and dive into our fried rice burrito next. Those who have been to the Woo Can Cook pop-up know that you can order our fried rice wrapped in a flour tortilla with a couple of fun additions that push things over the top. It takes an extra 5 minutes to make, but I promise it's gonna be worth it. So, let's get into it. Up first here is our quick pickled shallots, which as you'll notice, I'm doing with some Chinese shallots today, which are a little bit smaller in size for no reason other than that's what I could find at the market today. Personally, I much prefer the larger shallots that you'll find in American grocery stores, mostly because this is a lot of shallots to peel. So I'm removing the root and tip ends here, then peeling off this exterior layer, settling in and repeating this another, I don't know, a dozen times? Honestly, just get the larger shallots, because this is really annoying. I'm peeling about 1/2 pound of these, then slicing them up thinly and adding them to a mason jar with a tablespoon of coriander seed that you should be dry toasting and crushing in a mortar and pestle. Don't just go and drop this stuff in like a big dummy, because you'll end up with big chunks of coriander seed mixed with your shallots, Wesley. Anyway, next up, I'm combining 1/4 cup each of rice vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and a tablespoon of sugar. Then I'm bringing this to a boil in a small saucepan, adding it to my mason jar, and setting it aside for 30 minutes or as long as you want, honestly. The longer the better, really. Last up is our cilantro crema here, which, as you might guess, starts out with some cilantro, about 1 cup's worth. I'm separating these from their stems, then adding it to my food processor, followed finally by 1 cup of sour cream, 1 tablespoon of mayo, a single clove of garlic, and the juice of about 1/2 a lime. I'm blitzing all of this until a smooth cream forms, then seasoning to taste with some kosher salt, and setting it aside as we head back over to the stove one more time to heat up our flour tortilla. Now, these things don't need too much, they are already cooked and ready to eat after all, but they are made with lard though, so super important before you go and wrap that burrito, you want to loosen up that lard over light heat. This took me about 10 seconds per side, and it's gonna keep that tortilla from splitting as you roll it. Finally, I'm adding my fried rice here to start, followed by the greens of my green onions, a tablespoon of reserved sauce mixture if you remembered to set some aside, some fresh lime juice, cilantro crema, and pickled shallots. Then I'm saying a little prayer and rolling this bad boy up by folding its sides in first, then tucking everything in lengthwise. Finally, I'm splitting this thing open for maybe the greatest cross-section of all time, and we're ready to eat. Okay, so if you've never had a burrito before, this will be an odd one to start out with because it's filled with fried rice, and also, how have you never had a burrito before? But good God, this thing is delicious. The rich and savory qualities of our bacon fried rice pair surprisingly well with the brightness of our pickled shallots, then balanced out with a little bit of creamy, saucy goodness coming from our cilantro crema. The soft flour tortilla is a nice pairing with the crispy bits of bacon and rice, then complemented with the fresh crispy peas and carrots in each bite. I was a little concerned when I thought this up that the carbs inside of carbs combination would be a little bit overwhelming, but I actually think that the protein-heavy fried rice balances things out wonderfully. Lastly, as with any burrito, this is a great one to eat on the go, so if you happen to be in the Bay Area and find us at one of our market locations where there's nowhere to sit, this is going to be the perfect thing for you. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. For those following along, this one is part of a new series that we just kicked off dedicated to the wonderful weird world of Asian fusion. So if you haven't checked that series out yet, definitely head there next. For the Bay Area locals, we'll be serving this one up next at the Wu Can Cook Fried Rice pop-up at the Hayward Farmers Market next Saturday, September 25th. So come by and say hi if you can. More about that at wucancook.com/eats. Lastly, we'll be cooking through this one live this coming Tuesday right here on the YouTube channel at 6:30 PST. So tune in then and cook along with me if you can. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, be good humans, and I'll see you soon. Bye.